Evelyn Turner, a writer seeking solitude to finish her book, thought she'd found the perfect quiet room until things started to go wrong. Her pen disappears without a trace, chilling whispers fill the air at night, and when she looks into the mirror, a man with a sinister gaze stares back at her, copying her every move. Day by day, his presence grows stronger until she realizes he's no longer just a reflection. Who is this stranger? Why does he seem to know her deepest fears? And what will he take from her next? Before you uncover the terrifying truth, subscribe to the channel and join Evelyn's journey into the unknown. Evelyn sat alone in her cozy cottage, the sun dipping low on the horizon and casting long shadows across the small room. She had chosen this place to write her new novel, hoping the peace and quiet would help her find inspiration. The walls were lined with books, and the air smelled of aged paper and wood. It felt like a perfect retreat for a writer, away from the bustling city where she lived. But there was something strange about the cottage. It had an old, worn charm, with creaky floorboards that whispered secrets when she walked across them. The most intriguing feature was the antique mirror that hung on the wall. Its frame was intricately carved with swirling patterns, and the glass held a faint, foggy sheen, as if it had witnessed countless stories unfold over the years. Evelyn couldn't help but feel drawn to the mirror. It seemed to have a life of its own, reflecting not just her image, but also emotions she couldn't quite place. Some days, when she looked into it, she felt a chill run down her spine. It was as if the mirror held memories of love and loss that were not her own. As she sat at her writing desk, the pen poised above the empty page, her mind raced with ideas. She wanted to create a story that would grip readers, one that would linger in their thoughts long after they finished it. But as much as she tried to focus, the weight of her past pressed heavily on her chest. Memories of James, her late boyfriend, flooded her mind, his laughter, his warmth, and the way he had always encouraged her writing. But then came the painful memories of his sudden departure from her life, leaving her with unanswered questions and a heart full of sorrow. Evelyn took a deep breath and tried to shake off the dark thoughts. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. She had come here to write, to heal, and to find herself again. But the moment she put pen to paper, a sense of unease filled the room. It was almost as if the cottage itself was alive, watching her, waiting. That night, the wind howled outside, and the rain tapped against the windows like a nervous guest. The atmosphere grew heavy, charged with an unsettling energy. As Evelyn lay in bed, the shadows danced around her and she felt a presence lingering just beyond her vision. Suddenly she heard a soft whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "Evelyn?" It sent chills through her spine. She opened her eyes wide, heart racing, but the room was still. There was no one there, yet the air felt charged with anticipation. Who had called her name? Was it just her imagination, or was there something more? Determined to uncover the source of her unease, she decided to confront her fears. "I will finish this book," she promised herself, but deep down she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The mirror reflected her anxious face, but when she looked closer, she thought she saw something shift within it. An image of a man, a fleeting glimpse of a figure that made her heart race. What was happening in this cottage? What secrets did the mirror hold? Evelyn felt the weight of curiosity and dread settle in her chest. Little did she know that her quest for inspiration would lead her down a dark path, where love, hatred, and the unknown intertwined in ways she could never have imagined. With her heart pounding and her mind swirling, she closed her eyes, unsure of what the night would bring, but certain that something extraordinary and terrifying was about to unfold. The cottage stood at the edge of a quiet forest, surrounded by tall trees that whispered secrets to one another in the wind. It was a charming little place, built long ago and filled with character. As Evelyn approached the front door, she felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The air was crisp, and the sun was setting, casting a golden glow that danced through the leaves. Inside, the cottage was warm and inviting, with wooden beams overhead and walls adorned with shelves brimming with books. The scent of old paper mingled with the fresh smell of pine from the forest outside. It felt like stepping into a sanctuary, a perfect refuge for a writer seeking solitude. Evelyn placed her bag on the worn wooden table and took a moment to explore her new surroundings. The living area was small but cozy, with a plush armchair positioned near the fireplace. She could already imagine herself curled up there, lost in her thoughts as she wrote her novel. But as she wandered further into the cottage, she noticed something peculiar. The mirror on the wall. This mirror was unlike any she had seen before. Its ornate frame, carved with twisting vines and flowers, was beautiful, but seemed to hold a certain weight. The glass surface, though polished, had an unusual fog that lingered at the edges, making it difficult to see her reflection clearly. It was as if the mirror was holding back some hidden truths, waiting to reveal them only to those brave enough to look deeper. Evelyn felt an irresistible pull toward the mirror. When she looked into it, she saw herself, but the image felt distorted, as if it was reflecting not just her physical appearance but also her emotions, her sadness, her longing, and the fear that lurked in her heart. The longer she stared, the more she felt a connection to it, as if it were inviting her to uncover the mysteries within. After settling in, she tried to shake off the unease and began her writing. But every time she glanced at the mirror, she felt a shiver run down her spine. It was unsettling to think that the mirror might be watching her as she poured her thoughts onto the page. Was it merely a reflection of her mind, or was something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? As the night deepened, the wind howled outside, and the rain began to fall in heavy sheets. The sound of raindrops hitting the roof created a rhythmic beat that echoed through the cottage. Evelyn lit a candle on the table, casting flickering shadows that danced along the walls. The cozy glow was comforting, but it also heightened the tension in the air. With each stroke of her pen, she tried to focus on her story, but the atmosphere felt thick with anticipation. It was as if the cottage itself was alive, holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The shadows around her grew longer, stretching towards the mirror, as if trying to reach it. Evelyn felt her heart race as the darkness seemed to deepen, swallowing the light from the candle. Just then, a loud crash of thunder jolted her from her thoughts. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the cottage was plunged into darkness. Evelyn's breath quickened. She glanced at the mirror, her pulse pounding in her ears. When the lights flickered back on, she gasped. The mirror was not reflecting her image. Instead, she saw the outline of a man standing behind her, his features shrouded in shadow. Panic surged through her, and she quickly turned around, but the room was empty. There was only the echo of the storm outside and the sound of her own breathing. "What was that?" she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. The fear crept in, mingling with the curiosity that had drawn her to the cottage in the first place. She felt as though the mirror was a portal to another world, one that held secrets she was not yet ready to uncover. Determined to confront her fears, Evelyn approached the mirror again. Heart racing, she stared into its depths, searching for the man she had just seen, but all she found was her own reflection, looking back at her with wide, frightened eyes. It was just my imagination, she told herself, but deep down, she knew the cottage held something dark and mysterious. As the storm raged on outside, Evelyn felt the weight of uncertainty hanging in the air. What secrets did the mirror hold? Who was the man she had seen? And would she be able to unravel the mystery of the cottage, or would she find herself lost in its shadows forever? With every heartbeat, the tension grew, and Evelyn realized that her journey was only just beginning. The mirror was calling to her, and she was drawn into a web of suspense and curiosity that would change her life forever. As the storm raged outside, Evelyn tried to shake off the feeling of dread that clung to her. She returned to her writing, determined to focus on her story, but her mind kept drifting back to the mirror. The cottage felt alive with an energy she couldn't explain, and she sensed that something, or someone, was about to change everything. Days passed, and each night the storms would come, bringing heavy rain and howling winds. Each time, Evelyn would sit in her armchair with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her pen poised over her notebook, trying to find the right words. But as the weather grew worse, so did the strange occurrences. The mirror seemed to pulse with a life of its own, and she felt as if it were watching her, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. One particularly stormy night, Evelyn was deep in thought, her pen scratching the paper as she tried to bring her characters to life. Suddenly, she felt a cold breeze brush against her skin, and the candle flickered ominously. A shiver ran down her spine as she looked up, instinctively glancing at the mirror. To her shock, she didn't see her own reflection. Instead, the mirror revealed a darkened version of the room. The outline of a man stood behind her, bathed in shadows. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a thick beard that obscured most of his features. His presence felt both familiar and threatening, sending a wave of fear coursing through her. Evelyn's heart raced as she turned around quickly, but once again the room was empty. "What is happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Was this a figment of her imagination, or was it real? She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but the unease in her stomach only grew stronger. Determined to confront her fears, she walked closer to the mirror. As she peered into it, she felt an odd sensation, as if the air around her had shifted. The figure in the mirror seemed to smile, a slow, eerie grin that sent chills racing through her. It was as if he was welcoming her into his world, inviting her to understand the darkness that lay beyond the glass. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. The man in the mirror tilted his head, studying her with a look that sent another shiver down her spine. "You will find out soon enough," he replied, his voice deep and haunting, echoing in her mind. "You have called me here." Evelyn stumbled back, her heart pounding. "Called you here? I don't even know you," she exclaimed, panic rising within her. But deep down she sensed a strange connection, as if their fates were intertwined. She could feel the tension in the air, thick with unanswered questions, and an undeniable sense of danger. That night she barely slept. The howling wind outside was relentless, and the man's presence lingered in her mind. Who was he, and what did he want from her? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his shadowy figure, a smile etched on his face like a dark promise. The mirror had revealed something she wasn't prepared to confront, and the sense of foreboding loomed over her like a storm cloud. The following morning, determined to regain control, Evelyn decided to investigate the history of the cottage. She wanted to understand what she had gotten herself into. The nearby town was small, with friendly faces, but limited information. After gathering her courage, she ventured out, hoping to find someone who knew about the cottage's past. In the town's library, she met an elderly woman named Mabel, who had lived there her entire life. With curiosity dancing in her eyes, Evelyn shared her experiences in the cottage, mentioning the strange occurrences and the man in the mirror. Mabel's expression changed, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "You've seen him, haven't you?" she asked, her voice low and grave. "The other man. He's been haunting that cottage for years." "Haunting?" Evelyn echoed, her heart sinking. "What do you mean?" "He was a writer once," Mabel explained, her voice trembling slightly. "He lost his way, consumed by jealousy and anger. They say he wrote a powerful book, but he never finished it. He became trapped in that mirror, bound to the cottage, waiting for someone like you to arrive." Evelyn's mind raced. This man, the one she had seen, was a writer, just like her. Was it possible that he had been drawn to her, sensing her creative energy? Mabel continued. "He longs to finish his story, and he may take yours if you're not careful." The weight of Mabel's words pressed heavily on Evelyn. She felt the chill of the man's presence wrap around her like a shroud. He was not just a figment of her imagination. He was real, and he wanted something from her. As she walked back to the cottage, her heart pounded in her chest. Would the man in the mirror emerge again? What would he ask of her? She could feel the anticipation in the air, thick and heavy, like the calm before a storm. The boundaries between their worlds were blurring, and Evelyn realized that she was standing on the edge of a precipice, where love, hatred, and ambition intertwined. That night, as the storm raged once more, she found herself unable to write. The mirror's surface glowed faintly in the dim light, and she knew she had to confront the other man again. He had arrived, and the game was only just beginning. Evelyn paced the small confines of her cottage, her mind racing with questions and fears. The revelation about the other man, the one trapped in the mirror, loomed over her like a storm cloud threatening to burst. Mabel's words echoed in her mind. He may take yours if you're not careful. The thought sent chills down her spine, igniting a deep sense of dread. The night was dark and stormy, the wind howling outside as if mirroring her internal turmoil. She felt a pull towards the mirror, a compulsion to confront the other man once more. What did he want from her? Was he truly a reflection of her own ambitions, or something far more sinister? The boundaries between her reality and his world were thinning, and she could sense the danger growing ever closer. After tossing and turning in bed, Evelyn finally gathered the courage to face the mirror. She lit a few candles to illuminate the room, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. As she approached the mirror, her heart raced with anticipation. The air felt charged, heavy with unspoken words and hidden truths. She looked into the glass, and there he was, the other man. His beard framed his face, but his eyes were the most striking feature, dark and piercing, full of emotion. He looked back at her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. "You called me," he replied, his voice low and resonant. "You're a writer, just like I was. You understand the power of words, the magic they can create. But you're scared, aren't you? Scared of what lies ahead." Evelyn felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Yes, she was scared. She was terrified of losing herself in her writing. Terrified of the dark path ambition could lead her down. "I'm not scared of writing," she shot back defiantly. "I'm scared of losing control, of becoming like you." He smiled, a knowing expression that sent a chill through her. "You don't understand. This world is full of possibilities, of stories waiting to be told. You can be great, Evelyn, but you must let go of your fears." His gaze softened slightly. "I can help you." For a moment, Evelyn felt a strange connection to him. She could see the passion for storytelling reflected in his eyes, a fire that had once burned brightly in her own heart. But alongside that passion, she saw the shadow of despair, how it had consumed him, trapping him within the confines of the mirror. "I don't want to be trapped," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't want to lose myself in this." "But you already are," he replied, his tone turning urgent. "You're stuck in this little cottage, haunted by your fears. What if I told you there's a way out? A way to unleash your true potential?" Evelyn's heart raced. Was this a trick? Could she really trust him? "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously, every word weighing heavy in the air. "You can enter my world," he said, leaning closer to the mirror. "You can write without limits, create without fear, but it comes with a price." "What price?" she asked, a knot forming in her throat. "Your voice, your soul. You will become a part of my story, and I will become part of yours. You'll never go back to the mundane life you knew before." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "You will be powerful." Evelyn felt torn. The offer was intoxicating, filled with the promise of greatness, yet a deep instinct warned her of the danger lurking beneath the surface. She pictured herself lost in his world, her essence woven into his dark narrative, possibly never returning to her own life again. "I need time to think," she said, backing away from the mirror. The other man's expression darkened, and she saw the frustration flash across his face. "Time is not on your side, Evelyn," he warned. "Every moment you hesitate, you lose your chance to escape your reality. The more you resist, the stronger I become. You need to make a choice." With that, the candles flickered violently, casting the room into chaos. Shadows danced wildly across the walls, and for a brief moment she thought she saw glimpses of other worlds. Vivid landscapes filled with colorful characters, stories waiting to be told, and an exhilarating sense of freedom. But alongside those visions, there were also shadows of despair, echoes of lost souls trapped forever in the mirror. Evelyn turned away from the mirror, her heart pounding. She felt suffocated by the weight of her decision, torn between two worlds. On one side, the safety of her known life, with its struggles and limitations. On the other, the enticing call of the unknown, filled with the potential for greatness, but also darkness. As she retreated to her bed, Evelyn tried to calm her racing thoughts. The storm outside continued to rage, but it mirrored the turmoil inside her. She knew she had to make a choice soon, but the thought paralyzed her. The man in the mirror had a way of ensnaring her, drawing her in with promises of greatness while threatening to strip her of everything that made her who she was. And as she lay there, the darkness surrounding her felt more oppressive than ever. The line between reality and the other man's world blurred. And she knew that whatever path she chose would change her life forever. The shadows whispered secrets, urging her to embrace her fears and step into the unknown. But at what cost? Evelyn awoke to the sound of her phone buzzing on the bedside table. Groggy and disoriented, she reached for it, the harsh light piercing through the haze of her dreams. It was a message from Mabel, her best friend. "Can we meet? I need to talk." A knot twisted in her stomach. Mabel always had a knack for sensing when something was off. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, remembering the strange encounters with the other man in the mirror. Would she reveal her fears or keep them buried? Yet, the thought of being alone with her thoughts was unbearable. She quickly replied, agreeing to meet. Later that afternoon, the cafe was bustling with people, laughter echoing off the walls. Mabel was already seated at their usual table, her expression serious as she waved Evelyn over. "Hey, what's wrong?" Evelyn asked, trying to read her friend's face. Mabel leaned in closer, her voice low. "I've been worried about you. You've been acting strange lately. Is everything okay?" Evelyn took a deep breath, debating whether to confide in her friend. I don't know how to explain it," she admitted, her heart racing. "I feel like I'm losing control over my own life. Something's happening to me, something I can't quite understand." Mabel's eyes widened. "What do you mean? Are you in some kind of trouble?" Evelyn bit her lip, glancing around the cafe as if expecting the other man to materialize beside her. "It's not trouble exactly. It's more like, I've been seeing someone, but it's not who you think." "Oh," Mabel pressed, her curiosity piqued. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn hesitated, the words heavy in her throat. "It's a man I see in the mirror. He looks like me, but he's different. He's darker. He wants something from me, and I'm scared." Mabel leaned back, her brows furrowing in confusion. "A man in the mirror? Are you serious?" "Evelyn, that sounds like something out of a horror movie. You can't let your imagination get the best of you." "I know how it sounds," Evelyn replied, her voice shaking. "But it feels real. I've heard him speak, and I see him when I look into the mirror. He's trying to take over my life, Mabel. I can feel it." Mabel studied her friend, her expression softening. "Maybe you just need a break. You've been working so hard on your book. It's taking a toll on you. Why not step away for a while?" But Evelyn shook her head. "I can't. I have to finish my book. It's the only way to make sense of everything." Suddenly, Mabel's expression shifted from concern to determination. "You need to fight this. Whatever it is that's haunting you, you can't let it win. You're stronger than you think." The conversation left Evelyn feeling both supported and more terrified. Mabel's words hung in the air, urging her to confront the fear that threatened to consume her. But how could she fight against something so intangible? As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow through the cafe windows, a sense of urgency washed over her. She had to find a way to regain control before the other man grew stronger. The discussion with Mabel had ignited something within her, a spark of determination to understand this haunting presence. "Can we do something fun tonight?" Evelyn asked, a hint of desperation in her voice. "Something to take my mind off everything?" Mabel's face brightened. "Of course. Let's go to that new escape room downtown. It'll be a blast." Evelyn nodded, grateful for the distraction. But deep down, she felt the weight of the other man's presence looming over her. As they made their way to the escape room, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that this evening would be a turning point, a catalyst that would propel her toward a decision. When they arrived, the room was dimly lit, filled with mysterious props and puzzles. The air buzzed with excitement as groups of friends laughed and strategized around them. Evelyn tried to immerse herself in the fun, but her mind kept drifting back to the mirror. As they entered their designated escape room, the door locked behind them with an ominous click. The atmosphere shifted instantly, the playful laughter fading into a tense silence. A voice crackled through a hidden speaker, announcing the rules and the challenge ahead. "Welcome, adventurers. Your mission is to solve the mystery of the lost writer and escape within the hour." Evelyn's heart raced. The theme resonated with her own struggles, and for a moment, she felt a chill run down her spine. The clock began to tick, and her focus shifted to solving the puzzles, the distractions keeping the other man's voice at bay. But as they worked together, the tension in the air thickened. With every clue they unlocked, Evelyn sensed an unsettling presence lurking in the shadows. It was as if the other man was watching, waiting for her to falter. Each time they completed a task, she felt a little less like herself, and a little more like the character in the escape room, a part of someone else's story. "Evelyn, focus," Mabel called, snapping her back to the present. "We need your ideas." Evelyn nodded, shaking off the heavy feeling that had settled in her chest. She pushed through the unease and threw herself into the game, determined to conquer the challenge before her. But with every tick of the clock, the nagging thought of the mirror and the other man clawed at her mind. As they neared the end of the escape room, solving the final puzzle just moments before the timer went off, a sense of victory filled the air. But instead of relief, Evelyn felt an unsettling twist in her gut. The escape was temporary, a momentary reprieve from the real battle that awaited her. With the door finally unlocking, they stepped out into the bustling street, but Evelyn felt far from free. The victory felt hollow, overshadowed by the knowledge that the other man still lingered, waiting for her to make her choice. "See, that was fun," Mabel said, beaming with excitement. "You did great." Evelyn managed to smile, but inside, uncertainty gnawed at her. The escape room had been a distraction, but the real challenge was still ahead. The encounter had stirred something deep within her. A recognition that the other man's presence was not just a haunting, but a catalyst, a force pushing her towards a decision that would change everything. As they walked home, the shadows began to stretch across the path, and the air grew colder. Evelyn knew she was running out of time. The catalyst had ignited a fire within her, but it also made the stakes clearer. She had to confront the other man, to discover what he truly wanted, and to reclaim her life before it was too late. The days turned into a blur for Evelyn. Each morning she awoke with the echo of the other man's voice still ringing in her ears. At night, sleep eluded her as shadows danced across the walls, mocking her fears. The once quiet room now felt like a cage, trapping her between reality and the nightmare she couldn't escape. Evelyn tried to focus on her writing, hoping it would anchor her to sanity, but the words eluded her, slipping through her fingers like sand. Each time she sat at her desk, the mirror beckoned her, a dark reminder of the other man lurking just behind her reflection. She could feel his presence, like a cold breath on the back of her neck, always whispering, always watching. One afternoon, while sitting in her dimly lit room, she glanced at the mirror again. It felt as though it pulsed with energy, drawing her closer. As she stepped nearer, she noticed her own eyes looked hollow, filled with fear and uncertainty. But the other man? He seemed full of life, his beard framing a face that twisted into a smirk. "Why are you fighting me?" he whispered, his voice smooth and inviting. "You could join me, embrace who you really are." Evelyn's heart raced. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, though her voice was barely a whisper in the oppressive silence. The man leaned closer to the glass, his expression shifting to something sinister. "I want your life, Evelyn. You're wasting it. You should be free, not trapped in this mundane existence." "Free?" she echoed, her voice trembling. "You think I'll find freedom in you? You're nothing but a shadow." With each encounter, the other man's words wormed deeper into her mind, planting seeds of doubt. She began to question her reality. Was she really herself, or merely a reflection of this sinister figure? Her friends noticed the change. Mabel often called, concerned about Evelyn's growing detachment. "Evelyn, you're not yourself anymore," Mabel said one day over coffee, concern etching her face. "You need to talk to someone. This isn't healthy." But Evelyn could only nod, the weight of Mabel's words pressing down on her. "I'm fine, just busy with my book," she lied, forcing a smile. Inside, she felt like she was spiraling, the edges of her reality blurring with every passing day. That night, she sat at her desk, pen in hand, but the page remained blank. The darkness around her felt suffocating, as if the very walls were closing in. Frustrated, she slammed the pen down. "I can't do this anymore." Suddenly, the other man's voice echoed in her mind, sharp and taunting. "Why fight it? Let me help you. Together, we can create something extraordinary." Evelyn shivered, the idea both terrifying and tempting. What if she allowed him to take over, just for a moment, Could he write the stories that had eluded her grasp? Her thoughts spiraled as the notion took root, twisting her heart with fear and curiosity. She glanced at the mirror again, and there he was, more vivid than before. "You know you want this, Evelyn. Let me show you how it's done." Before she could think twice, she picked up her pen and pressed it against the paper. To her astonishment, the words began to flow, faster than she had ever written before. It felt exhilarating, as if the other man's energy coursed through her, igniting a fire she hadn't felt in ages. She wrote page after page, the story unraveling in a way that felt foreign yet intoxicating. But as the hours slipped away, the excitement gave way to dread. What had she done? The words on the page were brilliant, but they weren't hers. With each passing moment, she felt herself slipping further into the abyss, losing touch with her own identity. That night, she dreamt of the other man again. This time he stood in the mirror, not as a reflection, but as a living entity, stepping closer to her. "See what we can create together," he asked, his voice a melodic lure. "Just surrender to me, Evelyn. Together, we can be unstoppable." Evelyn woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The dream felt too real, too close. She stumbled to the mirror, horrified to find her reflection appearing more like the other man than herself. "Who am I?" she whispered, fear gripping her heart. "What have I become?" The days that followed were a blur of paranoia and madness. Evelyn found herself drawn to the mirror again and again, the other man's words echoing in her mind. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the walls were closing in on her. She began to see shadows lurking in the corners of her vision, dark figures that slipped away whenever she turned to look. With each passing moment, her grip on reality frayed. She started losing track of time, wandering through her days in a daze. Friends became distant memories, and her writing transformed into a chaotic collection of thoughts that made little sense. The world outside her room faded into an unrecognizable blur, replaced by the oppressive darkness that surrounded her. Evelyn began to isolate herself, the other man's presence growing stronger, almost like a physical entity in the room. He whispered sweet nothings that tinged her thoughts with madness. "You're a writer, Evelyn. This is what it means to create. Embrace it." Yet, deep down, she felt the icy tendrils of fear wrapping around her heart. What if he was right? What if she lost herself completely? The thought terrified her, but she couldn't deny the allure of his power. One evening, she stood in front of the mirror, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to lose myself," she cried. But the other man only smiled, his eyes gleaming with a hunger that sent shivers down her spine. "You won't lose yourself, you'll become so much more." In that moment, Evelyn felt a surge of defiance. "No, I won't let you win." But the battle within her raged on. The more she resisted, the stronger his hold seemed to become. Shadows danced in the corners of her mind, whispering doubts and fears, pulling her closer to the edge of madness. With each passing day, she felt herself slipping further into the abyss. The line between reality and illusion blurred, leaving her feeling trapped in a waking nightmare. And as she descended into the darkness, she couldn't help but wonder if she would ever find her way back. The descent into madness had begun, and the other man was waiting for her to take the final plunge. Evelyn's world had become a battlefield where love and hatred clashed in a brutal dance. Each day she wrestled with the other man's presence, feeling the intense pull of his dark charisma alongside the desperate yearning for her old self. He had captivated her in ways she couldn't understand, making her question everything she had once held dear. As days turned to nights, the line between affection and animosity blurred. The other man had become both a muse and a tormentor. In one moment, his words inspired her to write like never before. In the next, they filled her with dread. Each time she stared into the mirror, she felt a strange connection to him. A bond that flickered like a candle in the wind, beautiful yet fragile. One evening, after an exhausting day of writing, Evelyn sat on her bed, feeling overwhelmed. She clutched her notebook tightly, the pages filled with her chaotic thoughts and fragmented stories. "What is happening to me?" she whispered, frustration boiling over. She wanted to scream, to break free from the hold the other man had on her, yet a part of her craved the excitement he brought. Just then, the other man appeared in the mirror, his reflection sharper and more vivid than ever. "Why do you fight it, Evelyn? he asked, his voice smooth like silk. You know you want to embrace the power within you. Let me show you what we can create together. Evelyn felt her heart race, torn between the temptation of his offer and the fear of losing herself completely. You're not real, she shot back, anger bubbling to the surface. You're just a shadow, a reflection of my madness. He laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down her spine. Am I the part of you that you've kept hidden? You have the potential to be so much more than what you are now. Stop it, Evelyn cried, her hands trembling as she held onto the bedpost for support. I don't want this. I don't want you. But his gaze held her captive, and deep down, she felt a twisted connection. A flicker of affection ignited within her, mingling with the hatred she harbored for what he represented. The chaos, the loss of control, the fear that haunted her every waking moment. Why do you hate me, Evelyn? He asked, stepping closer to the glass. Because I reveal the truth? Because I show you your true self. The confrontation sent her spiraling. You're not my truth, she shouted, tears spilling down her cheeks. You're a monster, a part of me I can't accept. Am I? He replied, his voice low and dark. Or are you just afraid to accept the love that you feel for me? You want to embrace this darkness, but you're scared of what it means. You hate me because you hate yourself. The accusation hit her like a blow to the chest. It was true. She felt a strange attraction to him. The more she fought it, the stronger it became. She hated that he could manipulate her thoughts and feelings, yet a part of her longed to surrender to the madness, to embrace the creative power he offered. The struggle left her feeling broken and lost. As the days passed, the feelings of love and hatred intertwined, creating a tangled web of emotions that suffocated her. She felt as though she was caught in a storm, battling against waves of passion and resentment. Each time she sat down to write, the words poured out of her, raw and intense, fueled by the conflict raging within. One night, as she wrote feverishly, she felt a surge of inspiration like never before. The other man's voice echoed in her mind, guiding her, urging her to unleash her deepest fears and desires onto the page. The lines blurred further, and for a moment she lost herself completely in the writing. But then, as she wrote about their connection, her heart raced with a different kind of fear. The words morphed into something darker, revealing the horror of losing herself to him completely. She could see it clearly now. The other man wasn't just a reflection. He was the embodiment of her insecurities and failures, a manifestation of everything she feared becoming. Why do you push me away? He whispered in her ear, his breath sending shivers down her spine. I can make you feel alive, Evelyn. Together, we can create a masterpiece. Masterpiece? She retorted, her voice filled with anguish. Or a prison? His expression shifted, and for the first time, she saw a glimmer of vulnerability in his eyes. You know this is your chance to break free from the mundane. The world is full of color, and I can help you see it. But you must let go of your fear. Evelyn felt the weight of his words pressing down on her, pushing her toward a decision that terrified her. Could she embrace the chaos? Could she truly join him and unleash her creativity without losing herself? As the tension mounted, a part of her wanted to dive deeper into this strange, twisted relationship, to explore the dark side of her imagination. But the other part fought fiercely, clinging to the remnants of her identity. She realized the danger of giving in to the love she felt for the other man, a love that intertwined with the hatred of what he represented. In that moment of clarity, she knew she had to confront him. She needed to break the cycle, to reclaim her power. But as she looked into the mirror, the battle raged on, leaving her teetering on the edge of an emotional abyss. Will you let me in, Evelyn? He asked, his voice a seductive whisper. Will you embrace the darkness with me? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, as Evelyn stood frozen in place. Love and hatred entwined like a double helix, creating a bond that was both beautiful and terrifying. She felt the pull of his darkness, the allure of his power, but she also sensed the danger of surrendering completely. With her heart racing and the weight of the decision pressing down on her, she took a deep breath and prepared to face the consequences of her choice. The battle for her soul had reached a critical point, and she knew that whatever path she chose would forever change her life. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she stared into the mirror, feeling the weight of the decision before her. The other man's reflection smiled back at her, a mix of charm and menace that sent shivers down her spine. The tension in the room was thick, like the air before a storm, and she knew that she had to confront him once and for all. "Enough games?" she shouted, her voice trembling with both fear and determination. "I won't let you control me any longer." The other man's smile faded, and for the first time his eyes flashed with anger. "You think you can escape me? I am part of you, Evelyn. You can't run from yourself." With those words he stepped closer, and the room seemed to darken. Shadows danced around them, and the old mirror reflected a twisted version of their faces. Evelyn felt a surge of adrenaline as the fight within her escalated. The battle wasn't just between them, it was a fight for her very soul. "Show yourself," she yelled, challenging him. "Show me who you really are." The other man's expression shifted, revealing layers of pain and anger beneath his confident facade. "You want to see my true self? Fine, but be careful what you wish for." Suddenly the air crackled with energy, and the room filled with a blinding light. Evelyn shielded her eyes as a whirlwind of colors swirled around her. In the chaos, she felt herself being pulled into the mirror, drawn into a world where reality and imagination blurred. When the light faded, she found herself standing in a dark, twisted version of her room. The walls were covered with her unfinished stories, words scrawled in chaotic patterns. The air was heavy with despair, and a chill ran through her body. The other man stood before her, now more menacing than ever, his bearded face shadowed and eyes glowing with an unsettling light. "This is what you've created, Evelyn," he shouted, his voice echoing ominously. "A prison of your own making. You've let your fears and doubts consume you." Evelyn felt her heart race as she took a step back. "No, this isn't who I am," she cried, desperation flooding her voice. "I refuse to be defined by this darkness." As she spoke, she noticed something shifting in the air, a glimmer of hope in the midst of despair. She thought of the stories she had written, the characters who had found their way through pain and confusion. Inspiration flickered in her mind like a small flame in the darkness. "You're wrong," she shouted back, her voice stronger now. "I won't let you win. I can embrace my fears and transform them into something beautiful." With those words she reached deep within herself, pulling forth the strength she had hidden for so long. The other man sneered, but Evelyn felt a surge of power coursing through her veins. As she focused on the light within her, the darkness around them began to wane, pushed back by her determination. "I can create my own destiny," she declared, feeling the energy rise within her. "I won't let you take my voice or my stories." The other man's expression twisted in rage. "You think you can fight me? I am your greatest fear, your deepest desire. You can't escape." But Evelyn wasn't afraid anymore. Drawing on the love she had for her craft, she began to write in the air, letters shimmering and glowing as they formed words. "I choose to define my own story," she cried, each word a weapon against the darkness that threatened to consume her. The room shook as her words took form, wrapping around her like a shield. The other man stumbled back, his confidence faltering as he realized she was gaining strength. "No," he screamed, his voice filled with desperation. "You can't do this." But Evelyn pressed on, her heart racing as she unleashed the full force of her creativity. The words transformed into a radiant light, enveloping her and pushing the other man back. She could feel the love and passion for her writing pouring into the air, creating a barrier between them. As the light expanded, it illuminated the dark corners of her room, banishing the shadows. The other man writhed in agony, the darkness that had once empowered him now retreating. "You can't escape me. You need me," he yelled, but his voice grew weaker. "I need to be true to myself," Evelyn shouted back, her determination unyielding. "I will not let you define who I am." With one final push, she released all her fears, anger, and doubts, turning them into a powerful wave of light that surged toward the other man. The light consumed him, and for the first time he looked truly afraid. "No, this can't be happening," he cried, his form flickering like a dying flame. Evelyn felt a rush of exhilaration as the darkness began to dissolve, replaced by a warm glow that filled the room. The other man's reflection flickered in the mirror, his once solid form now a mere shadow of what it had been. "You may think you've won," he hissed, his voice fading, but I will always be a part of you." "I know," Evelyn replied, her voice steady and strong. "But I will control my own story from now on. You are not my master. You are merely a reflection of my past." As the last remnants of darkness evaporated, she stepped forward and touched the mirror. The surface shimmered like water, and for a moment she caught a glimpse of her true self, free, radiant, and powerful. The battle had been fierce, but Evelyn emerged victorious, reclaiming her voice and her destiny. With the other man finally vanquished, she knew the journey was not over. She had faced her fears and embraced the love for her writing, but the echoes of their connection would always linger. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to embrace whatever came next. The light of her creativity would guide her forward, transforming pain into beauty and love into inspiration. As the last flickers of darkness faded from the room, Evelyn stood before the mirror, her heart still racing from the battle she had just fought. The air was thick with a sense of peace, and the heavy weight of fear that had once clouded her mind was lifted. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the light surrounding her, a stark contrast to the coldness that had filled the space only moments before. The mirror, once a portal to her deepest fears, now shimmered with the vibrant energy of her creativity. She stepped closer, her reflection clearer than ever. This time she saw not just her face, but the spirit of a writer reborn, confident, strong, and ready to embrace the future. Evelyn knew she had a choice. The other man, the shadow of doubt and fear, had been a part of her, but he no longer had the power to control her life. Instead of feeling anger or hatred towards him, she felt a strange sense of gratitude. He had shown her the depths of her despair, forcing her to confront the parts of herself she had long ignored. "Thank you for the lesson," she whispered to the fading reflection, surprising herself with the kindness in her voice. With renewed determination, she turned away from the mirror, ready to reclaim her life. She walked to her desk, her heart pounding with excitement. The blank pages that had once filled her with dread now beckoned to her, waiting to be filled with her stories. She picked up her pen and began to write, the words flowing from her like a river breaking free from a dam. As she wrote, the stories came alive in her mind. Characters danced and spoke to her, their voices a symphony of creativity. She poured her heart into every word, embracing the emotions that had once threatened to drown her. Love, hatred, fear, and hope intertwined in her narratives, each story a reflection of her journey. Days turned into weeks, and Evelyn immersed herself in her writing. With every chapter she completed, she felt herself growing stronger. The shadow of the other man lingered, but instead of feeling afraid, she welcomed the memories of their confrontation. They reminded her of the power of her voice and the importance of facing one's fears. As she shared her stories with the world, something incredible happened. Readers resonated with her words, finding comfort in the raw emotions she had poured onto the pages. They connected with her characters, their struggles echoing the battles each person faced in their own lives. Evelyn realized that her stories had the power to inspire, to heal, and to connect people in ways she had never imagined. One evening, as she sat in her cozy room surrounded by stacks of her published works, she received a message from a fan. The message read, "Your story changed my life. I was lost, but your words helped me find my way." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes as she felt a surge of warmth in her heart. This was why she wrote, to make a difference, to touch lives, and to share her journey with others. However, a sense of unease still flickered in the back of her mind. The other man, despite his defeat, had not completely disappeared. As she stared into the mirror once more, she felt a chill sweep over her. In the depths of the reflection, she glimpsed a familiar shadow. "You can't escape me forever?" The other man's voice echoed softly, hauntingly. Evelyn shivered but held her ground. "No, but I can control how I respond to you," she said firmly. "You are a part of my past, but you do not define my future." The reflection wavered but didn't disappear. Determined to confront this lingering presence, she made a decision. She would not ignore the other man or pretend he didn't exist. Instead, she would acknowledge him, incorporating the lessons he had taught her into her writing. Every time doubt threatened to creep in, she would remind herself of the strength she had found within. With this newfound resolve, Evelyn embraced the complexity of her journey, both the light and the dark. She understood that life was not simply black and white, it was a tapestry woven with shades of gray. She would use her writing to explore these depths, delving into the intricacies of human emotions and relationships. As she continued to write, she felt a shift within herself. The fear that had once consumed her transformed into curiosity and wonder. The world around her became a source of inspiration. She explored new themes, diving into the realms of love, betrayal, and redemption, each story a reflection of her evolving self. The other man, now a mere whisper in her mind, became a character in her writing, a testament to her journey. He was no longer a source of fear, but a reminder of her resilience. Through her stories, she would ensure that his shadow would not darken her path, but illuminate it instead. In the years that followed, Evelyn became a renowned author, her books cherished by readers around the globe. She held workshops, sharing her experiences and encouraging others to confront their fears. Her journey inspired countless individuals to embrace their creativity and face their inner demons. The climax of her story had led to a resolution far beyond her expectations. The battle against the other man had not just been about defeating a shadow, it had been about discovering the light within herself. Evelyn had transformed her struggles into stories, her fears into triumphs, and her journey became a beacon of hope for others. As she looked in the mirror one last time, she saw not just a reflection, but a powerful narrative, a story of resilience, love, and the strength to choose one's destiny. The other man had played his role, but it was Evelyn who held the pen, ready to write the next chapter of her life, and in that moment, she felt truly free. Evelyn's journey had transformed her from a woman paralyzed by fear into a powerful voice in the literary world. The battle against the other man had not only changed her perspective on life, but had also allowed her to embrace her creativity fully. As she reflected on her journey, she felt a mix of gratitude and awe for the experiences that had shaped her. In the quiet moments of her writing, Evelyn often found herself revisiting the memories of the dark days spent in her small room. She remembered the chill that had crept into her heart each time she faced the mirror, the fear that had almost consumed her. Yet, she also remembered the strength she had discovered within herself, the courage to confront her fears, and the determination to reclaim her life. As her books flew off the shelves, she became a symbol of hope for many. Readers reached out to her, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. Each message reminded her of the connection her words created, a bridge between her experiences and those of others. This connection was a testament to the power of storytelling, a way to find solace and understanding in a world that often felt chaotic. But even with her newfound success, a lingering question echoed in Evelyn's mind. Would the other man ever truly vanish from her life? She had accepted him as part of her journey, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for a moment of weakness to re-emerge. This fear kept her vigilant, reminding her that the journey of self-discovery was ongoing. One evening, as she prepared for a book signing event, the mirror in her dressing room caught her eye. She paused, her heart racing. What if he returns? She thought, a shiver running down her spine. She could almost hear his voice whispering from the depths of her mind, taunting her with doubts. You're not good enough. You can't write anything worthwhile. Taking a deep breath, she approached the mirror. Instead of shying away, she faced her reflection head-on. You are not my enemy, she said firmly, the words echoing in the quiet room. You are a part of my past, but you do not define who I am now. I am stronger than you, and I will not be silenced. In that moment, the mirror reflected a woman transformed, not just a writer, but a warrior who had faced her fears and emerged victorious. The other man, once a terrifying presence, had become a shadow of her past, and she was ready to step into the light. With renewed confidence, Evelyn left the dressing room and walked into the bustling event hall. Fans eagerly awaited her arrival, and the atmosphere was electric with excitement. As she greeted each person, she felt the energy of their stories intertwining with hers. They were not just readers. They were fellow travelers on a journey of discovery. Throughout the evening, she shared her experiences and listened to the dreams and aspirations of those around her. With each conversation, the weight of her past fears lifted, replaced by a sense of purpose and belonging. She realized that her journey was not just about her struggles, it was about inspiring others to embrace their own paths and confront their inner demons. As the event came to a close, a young woman approached Evelyn, her eyes shining with hope. "Your book saved me," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I was lost and ready to give up, but your words gave me strength. Thank you for sharing your story." Evelyn felt a surge of warmth in her heart. This was the moment she had dreamed of, the opportunity to connect with someone who understood the power of vulnerability. She smiled and hugged the young woman tightly, knowing that this was the essence of her journey. Later, as she packed her things and prepared to leave, Evelyn glanced back at the mirror one last time. The reflection revealed not only her face but a tapestry of stories woven together by love, hatred, fear, and triumph. The other man may have been a part of her journey, but he no longer held any power over her. She had taken control of her narrative, and in doing so, she had discovered the incredible strength that resided within her. Evelyn stepped outside into the cool evening air, feeling the weight of her past lift off her shoulders. She was ready to embrace the future, one filled with new stories, new challenges, and the promise of hope. She understood that while the other man might occasionally whisper doubts in her ear, she had the tools to silence him. As she walked away from the event, her heart filled with a sense of peace and purpose. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was hers to navigate. She was no longer just a writer. She was a storyteller with a powerful voice, ready to inspire others to confront their fears and chase their dreams. In the distance, the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, and Evelyn felt a surge of excitement. Her story was far from over. It was merely a chapter in a much larger narrative. The possibilities stretched out before her like an open road, and with each step, she embraced the adventure that awaited. With the other man now merely a whisper in her past, Evelyn looked forward to a future filled with love, creativity, and the unwavering strength to continue writing her own story. Please like the video and subscribe the channel and click on bell icon.